So welcome everybody to this edition of Cape Ann ARTWaves, a member program of 1623 Studios here in Gloucester, Massachusetts. This is a show where every other week we interview a new artist who's either living or working on Cape Ann. And we go deep into the artist stories. I co-host and co-produce this show with Christine Fisher, who is generally on the alternate week. And we've really spent some time getting to know our local arts community through this program. And after we finish the interview, it will be available all over social media and on 1623 Studios. We'd also specifically like to thank our sponsors who came forward this year: Prince Insurance Agency, M. Christine Fisher Artist, Common Crow, and the Gibson Sotheby's International Realty, who have actually all made this year's show possible. So thank you to all of our sponsors. And I would also like to thank Sea Arts and 1623 Studios, who have been fantastic partners through this. We also have music by Steve Lacey and Pat Verga. And so we're really taking the whole arts community in as we do our show. Today's guest, our special guest, our artist, is Tricia O'Neill. And Tricia is a Gloucester resident, and she is also of Irish descent, and will share some of her wonderful connections to Ireland throughout this interview. And Tricia actually has art going in two different buckets at all times. She's a sign painter and hand letterer, which is something very special. And she's also a fantastic photographer. Trisha's been actually making photographs since the 1970s, but she really formalized this as an art form when she went back to school to the Museum of Fine Arts. And she's actually going to tell us a little bit more about her experience there and what she studied. She's also a graduate of a school called the Butera School of Art, which was down in Boston. It's no longer there, but it's a very specialized place where they taught both hand lettering and also commercial art. And I'm anxious to learn more about that from Tricia, because it sounds like something very special was lost in Boston. Tricia's received numerous awards, which she will allude to a little bit today in the interview. But she's actually done some very unusual things, including some CD covers for a band that's intricately linked to things that happen down in the baseball world in Boston, the Dropkick Murphys. I'm sorry, not monkeys. Who apparently are beloved by many who attend events at Fenway Park
and beyond.
And beyond. Yes, thank you, Trish. And she did their CD cover, and it led to many other exciting engagements for her. And for 5 years, she was actually the resident hand letterer at Fenway Park, and both here and also in Florida. So these are very unusual sort of opportunities for an artist. And so I'm looking forward for Trish to tell us more about that. Trish has also shown her work and been a resident at the Griffin Museum of Art. And she's also worked internationally in areas where she has been able to follow her passion in photography. But the stories that she's going to tell us today are far more interesting than me reading all of her incredible background. And so we're going to get started right away with Trish. So welcome, Tricia O'Neill.
Thank you for having me, Jackie DeFalco.
Tricia, you have two distinct lives as a creative. You have the sign painting and hand lettering as part of your background and really where you began your artistic journey. And then you added this incredible dimension of photography, which you always loved and then began to do professionally. So tell us a little bit about your path and why you decided to go down this path and what inspired you along the way.
Okay. Well, I just always loved art, first of all, all through grade school and high school, and I had some really great teachers in high school. One in particular, Pauline Finberg, who was a big inspiration for me. And I was really trying to figure my way to school because it wasn't part of my family's frame of reference. My parents emigrated here in the 50s, and they didn't have they weren't afforded the opportunity of higher education. They had to go to work pretty young, so on and so forth, kind of immigrant story. So I was kind of in the dark trying to find my way to school and doing all these continuing ed classes. And I really loved calligraphy when I was in high school. So I did some calligraphy continuing ed, but I loved it. And my teachers told me I was good at it, but I didn't want to be just limited to that scope. I wanted something a little bit bigger. And I met a friend from high school who was going to Butera School of Art. And she said that I should come in and visit her because she was doing lettering, but she was lettering on vehicles and on aluminum and on walls. And so I went to Butera School of Art. So I was 2 years out of high school before I went back to what I thought was college. But anyway, so I went to Butera School of Art for 2 years for sign painting. And I worked for about 6 months after I left school at Butera and moved to Dublin and worked for a sign company in Dublin and then started my own business there originally. So sign painting for me, even though I always loved photography, probably the most of anything I did creatively, I was being very pragmatic because I was coming from that kind of background where the question always was, what are you going to do with it? Because it had to translate to work. It kind of had to be practical. So sign painting married my, my desire to do something creative and also, my desire to get paid for what I was doing. So sign painting was really practical, and it was consciously a practical choice for me.
I love that about you. I can just see you up there on a ladder, doing all these incredible things. And I know we're going to show some photographs along the way of some of your early work. One of the things that I'm really interested in, because not many people really get exposed to this, is what can you tell us about that field that would be a surprise to people, or just something that we probably don't know?
Well, one thing that's probably not a surprise is that it was very male dominated. And then when I was in school, it was just the first class that was about 50-50. So in the early 80s, it was starting to shift. I guess what's unusual about it? Well, things you might not know are people tend to work solo, people that are sign painters, sign writers, sign artists, rather than big electrical signs, tend to be work solo. So there's a non-organized organization, as we call it, called the Letterheads, and then there's a spin-off from the Letterheads that are wall dogs. And so there's a whole movement of people around, it's international. So there's lots of meets that I've gone to since the early 90s that really help people share information and elevate the art of sign writing to what it means to me, the traditional hand lettering, mural painting. And so I bet you didn't know about those organizations.
I didn't. And the Letterheads, they just sound like it could be a rock band. I love that. Some very, very, very creative names there.
Yeah, seven guys started in Colorado, and it's got to be 30, 40 years old now, but it's really been helpful. Like, I don't think I would have gotten the Red Sox work if it weren't for the Letterhead meets and being able to call people and say, what paint should I use? How much should I charge? Those kind of things. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Actually, I already learned something new, and I'm sure the audience will too.
Well, the wall dog meets are interesting, and I'd love to bring them to Gloucester, as people descending on a town and just painting murals all over town that are historical to the town, it's related to history of the town or city.
Yes, I think I've recalled that did you do that up in Canada one year or something like that?
Canada, Greece, Ireland, England. Yeah.
Exactly. That is so exciting. So I think, there's a lot more to learn, and we're gonna show some photographs of you working on signs. I'd like to actually take a little bit of a pivot here and
Sure.
talk about photography, because in the end, you attended art school and focused in on photography. So you had obviously a lot of choices in art school in terms of where you were going to go from signs. So talk to us about why you chose photography in particular. And was there anything in particular, or a person that inspired you, or an experience that inspired you to go in that direction?
Not an experience or a person really. It's just what I always loved and kind of deprived myself of when I
Mm,
was younger and I was being so practical. And I thought, oh, that market's flooded. I better choose something else that's,
mhm,
unusual, less populated. And I really, the thrust was I really wanted to get my degree. And as I was saying earlier, I at Butera, I thought I was going to college, but really it was a 2-year kind of certificate program. But I didn't know anything about the structure of college and degrees and what's an
mm,
undergrad and what's a graduate, just because it wasn't part of my family's fabric. And we didn't have any family here. And when I was in high school in the late 70s, our classes were huge, like 700 students in each year. And so I didn't have any
mm.
guidance from school. I didn't have any guidance from home, not intentional, just no one, knew that I didn't know. And at home they didn't know. So I really wanted to achieve that. And I had been doing all kinds of continuing ed, some at the New England School of Photography. And I always got really good feedback from my teachers. So I wanted to pursue it further. And like I said, the ultimate goal being I wanted my degree. And if I'm going to go back to school as a non-traditional, older student, the only way I'm going to see it through all the philosophy classes and the history classes will be to do it through something I love, which is photography. So it was practical in a way, but also, when people would ask me then, what are you going to do with it? I would just say, I'm doing it. By being in
Yeah.
school, by going to school and pursuing um, my degree really was an act of defiance or rebellion, because it
Mm.
wasn't a place where, um, where uh, that was laid out for me, that I
Right.
felt
Right.
that I felt like I was welcome,
Mm.
even.
And Trish, it's really an important message, I think, because people are many people, maybe young people, are raised to think they have to go to school, and they don't even realize that not everybody even gets to have that conversation early in
Not
life.
at
So
all.
you had to make a lot of really important choices, and really coming from your perspective, I think that could be very helpful for young people who are going through that, or people later in life who are going through it,
Right, right.
regardless. So, that's a wonderful story to share. So but I want to have some fun now. So let's move on to where you are finding sort of your true north, the combination of your photography and your sign painting. Talk about an experience or a project where this has sort of all now come together for you. Now that you made the hard choices, you went to school, you rolled up your sleeves, then there's that moment in your history as an artist where you sort of turn the corner and start to really make a statement.
Yeah, so two projects come to mind, and the first that was really a shift for me was when I was in school and at the museum school and Tufts, and it was really difficult for me to be with a lot of privileged kids. They were young, I was not, so they didn't have experience outside their own experiences for the most part, but their high school education was like a college education to me, because lots of them were coming from private school. And I think I just got tired of them objectifying the working class and the uneducated like it was a choice for people that didn't have the choice to be in school.
Mm,
It's not a choice. So instead of pursuing the kind of art like I thought I should be doing, you know, doing what people were doing in school or experimental stuff. Uh, I wasn't really listening to myself, and I got so fed up with the classism and the elitism in the art world, and particularly in art school, that I decided I'm going to start photographing where I am and where I go to work and how I'm paying to get through school. So I was doing a lot of work at the time in a dealership in Arlington in their auto body shop. So I would letter vehicles for them and pinstripe vehicles for them, vehicles that had been in car accidents and one side of the car needed to be fixed, or van. And I started to shoot in the paint booths. Because in another family, the men, because they were all men, that are painting those beautiful paint jobs. And you know, with your husband too, painting, it's an art.
Yes.
And in a different family, they would have been on a fast track to art school, but they were a body shop because they didn't have those choices. And so for them to be spoken about, and for my family's background to be spoken about so offhandedly, I thought, well, I'm going to bring this to the fore just because it's where I am.
I think that will sort of demonstrate that when you look at that, you could see a lot of different things in that photograph.
Well, I like the story about how, you know, really describes me straddling the two worlds in that image, that when I would show it to the guys in the auto body shop, they would say, what is this, an OSHA violation? Is this is this an insurance claim? And then I'd show it at school and people would be waxing on about how it looked like a death chamber and it looked like an operating room, and, you know, just these crazy, completely opposite takes on the same image.
Right.
Which was
exactly.
Cool. Yeah.
That's a lot of fun. So I would like to just talk a little bit now about because you have talked about making a living and being able to pay for school, and then also being able to, you know, continue to work in the sign painting while you do your photography. So given that, is there any specific piece of advice that you would give to working artists who are trying to make a living from the business and the commercial side? Because you've been down a number of paths yourself. So I thought it's always good to share a little bit of that advice.
I find a lot of people that are, you know, wanting to break into the, you know, kind of elite art world and the, you know, elitism and gatekeeping that comes with that tend to hide the fact that they do commercial work. I think that no one should be ashamed of doing both, personally. I don't, you know, I don't think that because you have to work means that your art is any less valuable.
Right.
That's what I would say for people, to embrace doing both.
Okay.
If they can. I wish I did it sooner.
Yeah. That's really wonderful, Tricia. Thank you for sharing that. So you've done a lot of very special projects along the way, and I think, you know, it would be great for you to talk about, you know, sort of reflect on that and reflect on it in the context of having all this time over the last year to think about new directions, new opportunities, and what will be sort of what you've kind of experienced these last few years that will help take you forward in your photography or your sign painting or both. But I'd really like to know a little bit more about, you know, your sort of going forward, what you're thinking about these days, because we've also had a lot of time to think over the past year, right? about our direction in our art. So taking that forward, maybe an example of the project we talked about might be a good one to, your Martel Towers might be a good one to sort of elaborate on, because I think that probably has a little bit of element of the future in it.
Yes, it does. So I've been working on a project in Ireland documenting these Napoleonic fortifications called Martello Towers. And I've always seen them in my peripheral vision, you know, as a kid going to Ireland with my parents and I really never knew what they were called until Bono bought one and moved into one, and then I knew. So from pop culture, who cares about Napoleon? You know, it's Bono. Bono's living in one. So then I got interested in doing a project in Ireland after my mom died, and I wanted to spend more time there with my mom's sister, who I loved so much and loved spending time with her. So I was thinking about one kind of structure, but my cousin Anne, Nancy's daughter, redirected me and said, "Oh, Patricia, you don't want to do the round towers. Do the Martello towers. They're coastal. They're varied in use. So some of them are homes, some of them are museums. The James Joyce Museum is in one because Ulysses began from that tower in Sandiford. People live in them like Bono did. He doesn't live in that one anymore, but he lives nearby. So so I decided to pursue that. There are 37 still standing. So I have photographed 36 of them, and then the pandemic came. Yeah,
of course.
So the last one is in a Tony neighborhood outside Dublin that Bono now lives in, and it was purchased by an American couple who have said that they're happy for me to come photograph it, but then then we went into pandemic mode. So that's what I look forward to in the future is getting that last tower photographed, having the project, all of the visual for the project, and I'd like to make a book from it. And I have a friend who's a writer, a wonderful author in Dublin, and so I, maybe I could hopefully get that going.
Yeah,
that's what
I have to say, you shared with me the newsletter that talked about your actual journey to visit those towers, and that's something that I hope people will help you put it on your website, and I hope that people
I need to put a link to
you really need to link it on the website, because the actual getting to them was as much as the story is actually doing the photographs. I mean, that was quite the...
It's funny. I always kind of have these subplots. So we'll say sign painting really was a vehicle for feminism and breaking barriers for women. The, going back to school was the act of defiance, and, kind of, the tension of being in school with younger people that were coming from a different background. And then the Martello towers are a way for me to socialize and be around these wonderful Irish people that I love so much, and people helping me, people giving me history. And of course, as is my bent, I think a lot about the people that built them, and how on earth they got to the ends of the earth to build them out on these edges of nowhere, because they're coastal. Look at their signal towers. Yeah.
And in the time period, Trish, just so audience can really appreciate this, was
when the Martello towers were built. So 1804, 1805, they were, all built under English rule. So, the Irish were slave labor really to do them in Ireland, but they're in England and they're in Canada. Yeah.
Well, I also have to say that we didn't talk a lot about your Route 1 project, but I'm looking at you and looking behind you and seeing familiar places, steakhouse, right?
This,
and all these, and
this one's gone. I love this is in Hampton Beach. Oh, it's not really showing that well, but anyway.
Yes, that's fine.
It's now condos, and so that's why I wanted to document Route 1, before it was.
Well, it gives me a new appreciation for Route 1, and I think that probably the Martello towers were their own Route 1 in their time, right? It was a way of navigating.
By sea they were. By sea.
That's right, exactly, from one place to another. But I do believe you're telling some very powerful stories. You're creating signs, but you're capturing the meaning of signs in your photography. And that's very powerful. And I love that you are, really thinking about where you are when you're doing your work, and helping all of us document sort of where we are today, because that really is, in so many ways, our what we're supposed to be doing as artists.
That's right. That's right. That's very true. Yeah. And also in the instance of the Route 1 work, I feel like I'm honoring the artists
Yes.
that did the work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. Is there any job that's too small for Tricia at Signs Unique?
Uh, no, but truthfully now I'm doing less in the way of signs in my old age and doing more photo.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
but right now I'm pretty much at a standstill. My biggest client, I was doing a lot of work in New York City,
Mhm.
photographing commercially, and
Okay.
that was kind of my biggest client. But they're gone virtual going forward. They're not coming back. So I have
Mhm.
to rethink everything when we're out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But I have dribs and drabs, and I'm right now. I have my house filled with artwork from Annie Zirkabel's gallery, the Cape
Ooh,
Ann collectors, and
okay.
I document all of their work for them, so they have a
Hmm.
library of work. So that's been
Okay.
nice. Yeah,
Great. Great.
yeah, yeah.
Well, tell everybody the best way to find you online, and then we will also show that for you so that people can follow up with you.
Yeah. So yep. So I have a bunch of sites. Well, the Tricia at TriciaO'Neill.com. I also have that Steve, my husband, did a beautiful site for the Martello Towers. So it's martellotowers.com.
Great.
So that shows those. And I have a commercial photo site, and I have my sign site, which is signs-unique.com. So
Okay. Well, we will actually we'll get all that information set up here on the screen. So Tricia, thank you so much for your time today. It's really delightful, and I look forward to showing your work as part of this interview
thank
and
you.
sharing this wonderful interview with Tricia on YouTube and also on local channel 12 on our local cable TV and 1623 studios. You'll see this on.
They're so good. They're
They
so good.
are, I know. And we'll be sharing this on Facebook and on Twitter. It'll be coming out, in the next couple of weeks. So with that, we're going to sign off. And once again, I'd like to thank all of our sponsors who will be shown here on the screen. And that's it for this week's episode of Cape Ann ARTWaves.
Thank you for having me.